Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. It really is great to have you all with us. My name is Gary McGuire and I'm a Senior Digital Specialist here at Microsoft focused on security. We've got an important session lined up today with one of our strategic partners, CWSI. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Before we jump into things, I just want to take a step back. Now let's be honest, today is the 11th of December and as I was reliably informed this morning with just 14 sleeps to go, most of us are not thinking about cybersecurity, especially those frontline workers. We're thinking about office parties, finishing up work, booking time off, getting the food sorted, and making sure everything is ready for the break. That's where our minds naturally go at this time of year, and that's perfectly normal. But here's the thing, that shift in mindset is exactly what cyber criminals are counting on. When people are distracted, rushing the clock off, and looking forward to downtime, attackers see this as an opportunity. They know this is when vigilance drops, and that's why this conversation matters right now today. Over the next hour, we'll explore what the threat landscape looks like today, why this period is so critical, and what practical steps you can take to stay secure. We'll share insights from the front line and give you actionable guidance to protect your organization during this high-risk season. With that in mind, I'd like to hand over to Robin from CWSI, who will introduce the team and share a bit about CWSI before passing over to Ivo and Juan for the main session. Robin, over to you.
Great, thanks, Gary. So before we kind of start, just to kind of set the scenes in terms of who kind of CWSI are, if you just move to the next slide, Ivo. So us as an organization, our purpose is to really empower organizations to embrace innovation confidently as their trusted Microsoft security and compliance partner. Now, as Gary kind of mentioned a couple of times, if you just jump on, Ivo, to the next slide, the kind of main reasons why we're here, cyber breaches are becoming more and more frequent. We're seeing them on a daily basis coming through now. And the impact and the cost of those breaches are increasing as every attempt we kind of see. Similar to that, regulation is expanding and we're becoming more and more stringent. And the demand for AI is creating more business risks that we need to be prepared for and aligned to. From an organization standpoint, the number of security tools is proliferating and the skilled resources are becoming harder and harder to find to be able to kind of manage those security tool sets that you need. Quite simply, staying secure and compliant has become more difficult and more costly than ever before. So for those of you who aren't aware, obviously, as Gary mentioned, Microsoft are our kind of core partner. If you just jump on, Ivo, in terms of what we offer. And one of the main areas I'd like to kind of shout about here is we were the winner this year of the Microsoft Ireland Security Partner of the Year Award, really helping to demonstrate the level of expertise that CWSI as an organization have around kind of Microsoft and the security tool sets that they kind of use. Next slide, please. In terms of the offerings that we kind of provide here, CWSI offer 5 kind of core practices: our secure endpoint, secure data, secure application, our secure operations, and our secure identity practice, providing the overall managed services for our clients. And as you can see, we offer a range of different kind of services, from that professional services to managed services as well. In terms of some of the clients we kind of work with, we're not going to go into detail on each one of them here, but hopefully you can see that we work with a range of different industries and sizes, which really gives us quite a unique understanding around the different problems and pain points, especially frontline workers are facing at this time of year throughout the year as well. I'm now going to hand over to Ivo and Juan, who are going to be talking through the main part of today's session. So over to you.
Thanks, Robin. The awkward next slide, these questions now are done, at least. Sorry about that, really bad at navigating. So welcome everybody today. I'm going to kick off the session, and what I wanted to do at the start of the session is to give you a little bit of the overview of the state of cybercrime out today. All of this information is pulled directly from the Digital Defense Reports of 2025 from Microsoft. If you haven't looked at it before in detail, it's well worth the effort. But the key metrics I want to focus on today were what's more relevant to Frontline. So we're still seeing that 99% of observed attacks target identity. So identity is your entry point into your organization, no matter how the attackers look at your organization itself. And when we talk about AI, again, it's the same problem. AI is in the user context, so securing identity is going to be always a challenge. It's going to be the primary focus. So for the first half of 2025, identity-based attacks rose by 32%. And that is, again, a cause and effect of the AI boom that we're seeing here. Now, what the really key metric is to look at here is 61% of attack paths lead to a sensitive user account. So every identity is important. We can't just think that the service account or the admin is the core goal to secure. There are ways to do lateral movement, and I'll show you later on in the case study how that's being done. So it is important to understand how can the attacker go from a basic frontline user account to something that's quite important to the backend? How those identities get exposed? Evolving phishing techniques. So gone are the days of looking for bad English or mispronunciations or the usual key metrics that we would have seen in phishing tactics. Now, AI-driven phishing is 3 times more effective than traditional campaigns. That is a proven metric these days as well. And now you introduce things like click fix and file fix, social engineering attacks, because again, replicating a person's voice is quite simple these days. So social engineering attacks become more and more relevant. And what we're seeing is they don't send text messages or emails with links anymore. They send context of how to, hey, I'm here to help you change your password because I'm coming from your organization. So it's important to understand that aspect as well. An interesting statistic, so globally, business email compromise increase year-over-year is 30%. So that is still targeting that identity. And it's not just emails. So for years, we've told end users, don't click on links in emails. It's a bad thing to do. It's any medium, be that text message, Teams message, anything you can think of where you can click on a URL, that's where you're going to get targeted. Some interesting statistics as well. There's a little bit of a shift. Over 40% of hybrid ransomware attacks, so meaning the days of just on-prem being the victim here have long gone. They start to move into locking you down both your cloud instances, your SaaS applications, and your on-prem environment as well. 87% increase in cloud target destructive campaigns. So again, the more we move into cloud computing, the more SaaS applications we have. The attackers adapt to it as well, and they're really good at adapting to the system itself. So we're seeing a lot more attacks in that space as well. And lastly, AI creates new attack surfaces. So there are new attack surfaces, but the most important thing about AI is to remember that this is a giant spotlight that is shining a bright light on the areas that probably were already problematic. It's just, defense by obfuscation was always in place. So when we look at the AI attack surfaces created, shadow IT is being highlighted quite high. It's very easy to recognize these pieces of information leakage, AI models, and over-reliance. So again, if somebody poisons an AI model and you have staff that are over-reliant on AI, it's the same as doing a social engineering attack. So what does it look like in 2025? Some of these I'm sure you guys have seen throughout the newspaper articles. This is very frontline oriented, but this is just to show you that the attackers are exploiting the human element and the operational complexity. They are quite heavily involved in these particular areas, especially frontline. And the reason why is because the businesses rely on speed and accessibility and third-party integrations. The headlines you see aren't as isolated. They're part of a growing trend where cyber criminals weaponize identity compromise, social engineering, and supply chain vulnerability to maximize disruption. So why are the attackers working? What is the goal here? So the days of the bad guy wanting to target you specifically are gone, and cybercrime is a business. And we're seeing at the moment cybercrime is costing the world 10.5 trillion American dollars with a 10% year-on-year growth. If cybercrime would be a country, it would be the 3rd world's largest economy. So cybercrime as a service is industrializing. And when we look at the actual reason behind the attack, it's always going to be financial gain. There are a very, very small percentage that are nation state or any other reasons, but most of the attacks happen purely through financial gain. And that is important to remember because we're seeing now things like ransomware as a service. We're seeing, the attackers don't have to be experts anymore in the area. There are a lot of smaller attackers that look at extracting credentials, compromising PCs, etc. So when we're looking at the dark web out there, what the market looks like, I can hire an attacker for hire for as little as $250 per day or per job even. So I don't have to be an expert anymore. So it's becoming very easy for somebody to compromise and get paid out of it. I don't have to be the big bad wolf that's going to do ransomware and that's going to do the negotiations bits. I could just be looking at compromising PCs, stealing passwords, and then selling them on the dark web. Very low risk activity for me in here. So how Microsoft and why Microsoft in this scenario, I'm going to hand over this to Juan, and she's going to explain a little bit about how those tools are built and designed to prevent this particular scenario.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivo. I think that was the perfect description of, the landscape we see right now when it comes to, cybercrime and just how it's evolving, especially with AI usage. So now, for I think this is general knowledge for a lot of security teams, right? And stakeholders. The fact that we all sort of know at this point that SOC teams are now the pressure points, in security teams, right? And then a lot of times, a lot of the feedback we get is that teams are actually grappling with that unmanageable data volumes, because with the evolution of AI, with AI being adopted for so many solutions, right, it's making it, of course, really easy to come up with applications, with systems. Agents are being built every other day and all of that, right? So the data volume is really just massive. And because of this, SOC teams are actually experiencing an annual growth of like 250% in log data. Now, but what we see also with this is a lot of times teams are working with siloed security solutions. Now, I have one solution to manage my email protection, one to manage, endpoints, identity, and so on and so forth, right? And this could be for any reason at all. But then what this means is defenders, I love to call, the security analysts and operatives defenders, because that really is what we're doing, right? So defenders are now they're unable to really see the wider picture, understand like the blast radius when an attacker actually compromises a certain system in their, in the entire landscape, so to speak, right? And this could then lead to, overlooking important signals, right? Important signals that could lead to, better protecting your environment, right? So with that, it also leads to like slow response. And of course, attackers would then exploit those slow responses and the siloed systems. And it enables them to then move laterally between, your environments, and they're able to, just from like we see in this particular graph, right? So you're able to see originating just from a phishing email, right? The user clicks on it, probably, it's an email that says, oh yeah, you just want something, or this is the annual bonus, right? Click on it and see more details, right? From just going through that, they authenticate, the attacker is actually able to then install, a malware on their system. And from there, their identity, of course, is compromised. And, the attacker literally moves laterally between the system. And what started as, a small, or that seemed like a small breach, then escalates into a full-scale incident, right? And then expanding beyond that initial entry point, and of course, in increasing the likelihood also of persistent access. So ultimately, what we are seeing a lot of is the fact that silos actually hinder defenders, right, in both the prevention and, of course, response to attacks, and then leaving SOC teams under immense pressure, to manage growing threats effectively. So now, what's the solution for this, right? How can we better, defend our environment? How can we better protect our environment, and have visibility on what exactly is happening? And of course, manage and defend our environment, not with the traditional methods, but then with AI automations. Now, this is where Defender XDR then comes in place. Now, when we think of Defender XDR, it's really summarized in four words, right? So prevent, detect, prevent, protect, detect and respond, and then extend as well, right? So we're able to have the ability to actually protect across cross domains. So as you see at the top over here, so, for your hybrid identities, you're able to, if you have like a cloud only identity or a hybrid scenario, you're able to actually protect those environments, right? Your endpoints, now this could be user machines, this could be servers, as the case may be, and also IoTs as well, right? So your printers, your network drivers, and all of that, right? So you're actually able to protect all of those endpoints, your email and collaboration, right? And it goes beyond just the ordinary, anti-phish, anti-spam, anti-malware protection. It's also giving you that AI-powered machine learning capability, because, with email protection, that's where we would have Defender for Office 365. And within that, we have what we call the zero-hour auto purge, for example, where even if for some reason, a phishing email actually gets through, right? the moment our systems review that and then we're able to categorize that, yet this is definitely, this is a suspicious message, right? You're actually able to automatically purge that message from the user's mailbox and send it over to the quarantine, right? We also have protection for SaaS applications. So we have the Defender for cloud apps. This allows you to, sanction or unsanction certain applications, understand, the sort of what products or what applications are my users accessing, and actually build conditional access policies, to protect those, right? A way I would see some organizations use this, for example, would be a lot of companies are starting to build their, AI strategy, right? And then they want to ensure that, users are actually adopting the chosen and protected, AI tool for the organization, that there's no, data isn't being shared outside of the organization. Now, in order to do this, you need to understand, okay, what other, shadow AI apps are my users actually utilizing, right? And then how can I prevent that, or, make sure that I have visibility to such applications? That's where Defender for Cloud Apps really fits in, right? And it does an amazing job of. Then, of course, we can't leave out data. I think data at the end of the day is like our most valued asset, right? Because at the end of the day, yeah, truly, the attackers, they think in graphs, and then, when they get into your environment, they know exactly where they're heading to. In the past, we would have attackers actually, encrypt data and then, of course, hold users to, or administrators and entire organizations to ransom, right, to have that data decrypted. But now we're seeing an increase in data exfiltration, right? So, and of course, that could then lead to reputational damage, financial loss, and so many other cases like that. So now with Defender XDR, we also pull in, DLP signals and alerts and everything that has been configured within your Microsoft Purview, right, which is our data protection solution. So all of those alerts, you actually get them embedded with Defender XDR, and you're able to see the wider picture of, what's the blast radius of this attack, and then how can I, better understand the attack story and stop that attacker on their path. And of course, not to leave out cloud workloads. So this also can be extended to your, IaaS services, if you have servers hosted on Azure, AWS, third-party solutions, not just the Microsoft solution, right? You can actually extend that capability, get to understand the vulnerabilities within your platforms, and then also, of course, recommendations on how to fill those gaps. So it's really around bringing together all of your solutions, getting the right protections in place, and automating the ways that you protect your environment, right? Now, a great thing about Defender XDR is also the fact that, we're trying to break down those silos that I mentioned earlier. So it's not just, some of the solutions that I mentioned, it's also around one thing that we recently announced as Microsoft was our unified SecOps portal. So for existing customers, this would be like your Defender portal that you're already used to. But what you would have noticed of late is we've actually started to bring together all of our security solutions into that one portal. And now we've rebranded it as the Unified SecOps. So if you had Sentinel, for example, which is our SIEM solution, SIEM and SOAR solution, right? You're able to actually migrate your Sentinel workload into the unified portal, and then all of the signals that you're getting from Sentinel, right? All of the functionalities, the connectors, it actually goes in to then feed into your XDR, and you're able to get, richer insights and better protect your environment, right? So when we think Defender XDR, when we think unified, it's the same, it's the XDR capability, cloud security, exposure management as well, right? So you're able to reduce that exposure level across your digital estate, right? You're able to understand, what assets are most exposed to attacks, what assets could possibly be compromised when an attacker gets into your environment, who are our critical users, and you can define most of that as well. And of course, all of this is built in with artificial intelligence. some of you might have heard, but at Ignite last month, we actually announced, an integration of Security Copilot with one of our offerings, right? So now you're able to utilize that artificial intelligence to actually better respond and then better, protect and defend your environment, right? So it's really giving you that AI-powered capability and, of course, threat intelligence as well. As Microsoft, we analyze over 100 trillion threat signals daily, right? And this is because, of course, we have a wide range of customers. Over here, we also use our solution. We like to say we eat our own dog food. So we use our solution. We're actually one of the top attacked organizations, right? Attackers are always looking at ways to compromise, and that's because they're trying to get access to customer details. So because of we see all of that, we're always on top of staying protected, driving advancements to actually better protect our estate and also our customers, digital estate, right? And make sure that we're having the right research being carried out, the right tools are being, brought to our customers, to better protect your landscape, right? So we feed all of that insight as well within Defender XDR, and then it just helps to, better protect your environment. So now, I wouldn't, I don't want to blow our own trumpet. So this is actually some reports from, Minter Ingenuity Attack Evaluation and also Gartner, who have recognized Microsoft as a market leader in both XDR and then EDR, right? And also market leader in various other, domains. So identity protection, SIEM and SOAR, to name but a few, right? So we definitely are on top of the game when it comes to, protecting our customers' digital estate, making sure that, you have the right tools in place, and then simplifying that process as well, right? To save you time to focus on what really matters in your environment. So yeah, over to you, back to you, Ivo, to walk us through, just the frontline overview.
Thanks, Juan, for that. So looking at Frontline overview itself, what we're going to look at a case study of a made-up organization, but the actual events or how those organizations got breached is a combination of two of the largest breaches probably in the last 10 years. And I'll be very surprised if you guys don't recognize where they're coming from. But just to cover a little bit, so the main challenges when we're talking about the Frontline organization, and it doesn't have to be retail. In this case, we're going to use retail as an example, but every frontline organization is very similar in its core and have similar challenges. The primary challenge you have is onboarding complexity. The sheer amount of frontline staff that are going through the organization. And if we look at some of the statistics and some of the research, IT faces the complexity of high turnover, with nearly half the frontline workers plan to leave in the year ahead. So this just means that onboarding has to be quick. The people have to start working quite quick as well. It results in poor security posture, and the shortcuts lead to things like shared credentials, weak passwords, potentially a delay in MFA enrollment, because again, we want to get the person up and running as quick as we can. Frontline workers are some of the hardest working people in the world, as you'll see, and they do have a very much get the job done attitude, which is great from a business perspective. But when we think about how do we get the job done, if the IT systems are not designed to be fast and reliant, they will get the job done, but shadow IT is going to come into play. They'll use any application, any means. I mean, that's how shared parts must happen as well, right? I can't log into my X, Y, and Z. Can I use yours just to get the job done? So that's something really important to understand as well. And lastly, there is an evolving threat landscape. Wow. There is AI-driven phishing, as I mentioned before. A lot of the organizations still have not adapted MFA. Attackers have moved on to techniques to bypass MFA. So there's a pretty decent gap here between the identity solutions themselves. Supply chain compromises become more and more relevant, and I think the governments themselves have recognized this. Hence, NIS2 asks everybody to look at supply chain, and it's quite important to do that. Attacks are a lot faster, a lot more sophisticated. The attack surface isn't static. So when we look at the frontline organization, there's a lot of things going on, and there still isn't dedicated security resources. The attack surfaces are expanding and changing every day. So that means our defense strategy must evolve just as quickly. And we should be focusing on visibility, identity protection, and zero trust principles. So when we look at a typical frontline organization, we're looking at key personas here. And again, I've used a sales associate as the frontline example, but this could be anybody in healthcare, emergency services, hospitality, transport, retail, utilities. They all have frontline workers. And the really interesting statistic here is that the frontline staff make up 80% of a typical organization. So hence the risk is quite high in there. If you look at the breakdown, we have 80% frontline, about 5% of store managers or the frontline managers, about 15% of back office staff, and then an overdraw of external contractors who still access your environment. These could be your HVAC maintenance, these could be your IT support, cleaning, logistics, irrelevant. They all have access to your organization, be that digital or physical. So when we look at the key risks on a frontline person, they are susceptible to phishing and social engineering. And they might not have the relevant training to IT security because, again, of the constant staff churn, they just might not have gotten to it just yet to have them onboarded into your security standards. Shared device usage is quite common and is quite useful to them as well. It's really powerful, but that means it increases risk, increases credential risk. And again, weak password hygiene is something that we see all the time at Frontline as well. Frontline are too busy to think about complex passwords and security, etc. Hence, it's our job as IT specialists or security specialists to make life easier for them. We should start thinking about passwords. We should start thinking about, phishing resistant MFAs, etc. When we look at external contractors, it's a very similar scenario. The problem is we don't see what device they're using, so they could be unpatched devices. They might be patched, but they might be unpatched. You don't have visibility. They do share credentials because, again, otherwise onboarding is complex. Supply chain compromise is a big ticket item here. MFA being bypassed by social engineering. If you're an external contractor, you might not be as familiar with your service desk procedures. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm calling from X, Y, and Z, and I'm here to help you reset your password or set up your MFA, you're more likely to go along with it just to, again, get the job done. The store managers, back office workers, they're a bit more traditional. There is still risks targeted at them, but attackers will always take the path of least resistance. If the frontline person is easier to phish or to social engineer, that's where the key is going to be. I don't want to spend a lot of effort trying to break an account with somebody who's knowledgeable, who's been trained, who has a lot of protection systems in them. I will focus on the frontline first. So on the breach case study, what I'll do, I'll cover a little bit of the methodology. So MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's been around since 2013. It's a research framework. It's a giant knowledge base, basically. What it does, it maps the attacks to specific key points and just proves again that each attack follows the same pattern. They're all very different, but they do follow the same pattern. The main reason for the MITRE ATT&CK framework and why an industry would ever want to adapt it is to go away from what Juan mentioned, the siloed approach where I have an endpoint protection tool, an identity protection tool, etc. I need to start looking at behaviors. I need to start looking at patterns, a behavioral pattern. So really, really simple example again is an IT person trying to log into a server to a remote desktop. That is not a malicious activity by any means. That's a day-to-day activity. But if I have alerts from my XDR system that particular user clicked on a phishing link, potentially compromised credentials, and then I'm trying to remote desktop to the server, that follows a behavioral path that MITRE has recognized, and XDR solutions can block that dead in its track. But if the security tooling is not talking to each other, you're probably in trouble. So covering that, I'll go over the attack timeline. I'm not going to dive too deep into the technical things. What I have done is I've listed out the techniques used at each stage of the attack. You will be these slides will be shared with you. If you want to delve a little bit deeper and understand better, you're more than welcome to do a little bit of research and look through it. So again, when the attack starts, it's going to be the initial access, right? So we need to get into the organization. So the very first thing they're going to do is some kind of phishing attempt, be that calling up a person to do an MFA reset for social engineering, be that compromising the external contractor's credentials due to weak password hygiene. The very first point is going to be trying to get in. And in this case, it wasn't an external contractor. Their credentials got exposed. they called to set up MFA, to help them set up MFA, stole the MFA token, and had access into the organization itself. Once the attackers are inside, they're not going to waste any time. They're going to start executing scripts to get their foothold into place. So just the credential zone is not that useful here. So in this case, a script was deployed to install malware on the POS system. The alternative approach would be, again, the voice phishing attempt or the social engineering attempt to issue PowerShell commands to execute a click fix phishing technique. Once they're in, they know that staying in the environment is key. So persistence is going to be quite important. So they currently have a small foothold of your organization. They will look at gaining persistence. So the malware is going to be configured to run continuously on your POS endpoints or back office servers. And this could be done via scheduled tasks. This could be done via some obfuscation. I mean, we've seen some really interesting things being done. We've seen things like Edge, for example, but it's, you know, the executable is going to be called Edge 0000.exe. And that just gets launched every day, and it's launched windowless, so you can't see it being launched. It just runs in the background, and the attackers establish the foothold and have persistence in your systems. Once we're in the organization, we have persistence in place. We need, the attacker will need to start looking at avoiding detection. So defense evasion is about blending in, looking normal while doing something malicious, and that's exactly how they approach these things. They're going to start exploiting weaknesses like poor network segmentation to access payment processing servers, for example. Apologies. The other thing that they're going to start looking at is for privilege escalation is they're going to start looking at credential dumping. So if I have access to a single system, I want to know what else do I have access to, what potential admin is logged into it, what other user with different privileges has logged into the system. Every new credential opens another door. And that's really important to understand. The attackers will have your environment mapped out within an hour better than you ever had in your design documentation. They're very, very good at that, and that's the key there. So with defense evasion, again, malware is disguised as a legitimate process to avoid AV solutions. So if you go back to that RDP scenario, it's very easy to mask and attack, especially if the systems are not talking to each other. And it's really important to understand, again, is that no matter who your product is, be that Microsoft or a third-party product, apologies, guys, the most important thing you need to think about here is that all those siloed products need to be able to talk to each other. That is the XDR solution. That's what gives you that protection on top of just a single alert that might seem quite irrelevant. So they will start using things like remote desktop or SMB to try and navigate your network and to start spreading laterally about your environment. They will identify systems for potentially a POS endpoint or a map network topology to additional systems. So again, if you think about the sales scenario here, the POS endpoint probably talks to some backend server or to some SaaS solution that stores payment data or stores information that is required. And again, in Frontline, that could be just customer data or data of any user that has interacted with the service itself. And the key here is that Frontline does interact with the public quite a lot. That is the main reason for the business, be that sales, healthcare, or anything else. So with harvesting additional credentials for lateral movement, the attacker is able to start capturing some of the information in your organization. So depending on where they're going to go next. So one thing they could do is they could look at ransomware. That is really complex and it requires quite a lot of effort, and it's a dangerous activity on their side as well. Or they could just look to start stealing your information, maybe card information, maybe social numbers, or anything else they can use in additional attacks. If we think back to that, the dark web slides where that information can be sold up, that's an instant payout. So once lateral movement has happened, they're going to pivot across to other systems. They're going to try and maximize the profit they can get. So if the initial approach was, I want to extract credit card data, for example, I noticed that you have a back office system that stores customer information. That's useful to me as well. And they will try to maximize profit. So they will move across your organization as much as they can, find as much information as possible, only to result into capturing all sensitive data for memories, for example, from memory scraping, or capturing the data before it gets tokenized, and capturing full databases. And then when we think about AI itself, if you have your own AI model, all they would have to do is steal your model, and that has a lot of organization data already, and that's in a queryable format. So any data they will get their hands on, they will capture. They will use obfuscation techniques, so they will start exfiltrating data to external cloud storage, things like FTP or any other services. There's a lot of SaaS applications that support this. They will throttle that export as well, so that it doesn't look malicious. You don't see this user start pumping out tons of data. They might do it over time, depending on how quietly they want to get into their organization, how long do they want to stay in there in place. That would be the typical attack chain in high-level broad strokes. Obviously, there's a lot more behind it, a lot more techniques being used. But this is a very normal pattern. This happened to a couple of large organizations, as we saw at the slide. This year, it happened to quite a lot of frontline organizations as well. So what's the actual damage from this? On an average, this impact can cost up to $590,000 of a security breach that could have been prevented. So when we think about security tooling, yes, security tooling is expensive, absolutely, completely agree. But when we look at the mitigation of or the cost of a breach, it's quite important to understand that is an impact on the organization. And unfortunately, it's not the only impact. When we start looking further down the line, you're looking at potential leadership resignations, you're looking at lawsuits from clients or any member that interacted with the organization, you look at trade investigations, because again, the organization's security is your responsibility. So if you didn't take measures to secure yourself and you got breached, these type of activities will be faced afterwards. You're also looking at massive reputational damage. So again, if it's a frontline, let's take the HSE, or let's take any of the frontline organizations that have been breached in the last year. As a customer, you will try and avoid the organizations that have been breached or that are not taking care of their data they're storing. So reputation damage can be very, very impactful in this scenario. Disruptions can cause financial loss. So again, if you're a retailer, for example, if you're doing an online retail system and your SaaS application is brought down, every hour you're not able to sell is a loss to the business. If you're frontline, for example, healthcare, every hour you're not able to assist people, that is even more impactful. Like if we think about what does Frontline deliver to us as individual users, those services are quite important, and in some cases critical as well. So it is important to understand that disruption will cause problems. Financial loss in this example, different loss in other examples. And lastly, potential impact in supply chain. And I think this is a really interesting one. And I don't like to name specific areas in the organizations or out in the world, but Jaguar was a fantastic example. Jaguar got breached, disruption in their production chain. This caused a massive impact on the supply chain. Anybody that was relying on them further down the line was not able to execute business as well. So when we think about the economical impact on that as well, and together with the reputational damage loss, it's quite severe on your organization. So with that said, Juan is going to show us how do we mitigate these problems and what can we potentially do to speed up some of the challenges like onboarding or protecting endpoints and etc. And hopefully a small demo as well afterwards, Juan, is it?
Yeah, thanks, Ivo. Yes. So Ivo has rightly walked us through, what it feels like to actually experience like a frontline, breach case study, right? But then what's the what would it look like when we have the right tools, right? When we are securely protecting our identities, our emails, our apps and endpoints, right? When we have the right solutions that give us all of those signals and give us the right access really to better protect our environment. So in this, just like you see at the moment, right, in this particular deck, now this is just an example of a customer in the retail sector, right, with the right tools. In this case, Tara's organization, they've hired many new retail workers. It's the busy holiday season, of course, they need to be able to cater to customers' needs. And then because Tara has the right tool, she's able to easily manage all of their identities, from that central location, which would be Entra ID, right? She's able to put the right protections in place and protections to prevent, token replays or to enforce MFA and, so many other protections as well. So now, in this instance, when a phishing email is detected on one user's email, right, she also has automatic incident remediation in place with Defender. And because of that, that compromised user's account is actually automatically isolated, right, before their data is compromised, before the attacker is able to move laterally between the systems. And then Tara is also able to, send a warning to other frontline workers about that phishing attack. Notify them. Probably the phishing started with, oh yeah, this is our annual bonus, or, we have a special discount running, click on this link to get access to it and all of that, right? So she's able to educate her users on that technique. And then, of course, she's also able to detect advanced attacks from an untrusted site, email or compromised device. And then because of that, she's also able to quickly remediate her organization's endpoint security solution. And this helps Tara, who is a security specialist, to then be able to feel more secure, right? Despite it being peak season, holiday season, everyone is like really excited and just wants to, take a break. But then she's rest assured that her environment is secure despite the distractions, so to speak. So at this point, I'll switch over to a demo, right, which would sort of show you, okay, what does it look like? What does the Defender or the Unified SecOps portal look like, which we mentioned earlier? And then what's the process when, take for example, I'll be working through a business email compromise scenario, right? What does that actually look like? So first of all, on my screen, you can see, what you see is the Unified SecOps portal, right? So from here, I'm able to, identify or to easily navigate to the incidents section within Defender 365. And then I'm able to, access all of the incidents affecting different platforms in my environment. This could be, endpoint, it could be email, identity, all of it, right? So all the alerts that generate from the different tools, just like we mentioned earlier, it all feeds in here into the Unified SecOps portal. In this case, I want to drill down on a business email compromise, fraud attack. So right now, at quick glance, I'm able to see the attack story, right? I can see just the different components that are involved in that attack. I'm able to, because I have Security Copilot, which I mentioned earlier, I have Security Copilot, embedded in this tenant. I also see a quick incident summary, just at quick glance, I'm able to just automatically review all of these different components. And you can also see that, the attack was actually automatically disrupted in Defender XDR, right? And, it has all of the tags. This is a business email compromise. This is being reviewed by Security Copilot. And then even right from this portal, I'm also able to easily, because I have, yet again, I have Security Copilot embedded in this environment, right? It then gives me, quick insights. I'm able to triage an incident, for example. I can quickly classify that incident. I can easily take certain actions. For example, I'm able to force a password reset. So for that particular affected user, so I can then force that password reset just by click of a button. And that's because, focusing on that integration aspect, right? Previously, I would probably need to go to my identity management solution. From there, I'm then able to force a password reset and all of that. But then right within the Unified SecOps, I'm able to carry that task, right? Now I force that password reset. I'm able to drill down to the actual alerts, right, that make up this incident. And in this case, I'm able to, for example, I click on this first alert that has to do with the suspicious URL being clicked. And then I can see more details about, about that particular incident. I can see more details about, just where the user is, the attacker is actually navigating, or that incident is being generated from. And then I can get more insights and details into what exactly is happening in the environment. Did the user click on a ZAP quarantined email? I'm able to review that email, and get the right insights into better protecting my environment, right? And this is all within that Unified SecOps portal, right? And another thing as well you would notice is we actually have a recommended actions tab in here. So you're able to navigate to get recommended actions on how to better protect your environment, how to better respond to this incident, right? It also, one thing that we also have within the Unified SecOps portal is we have incident correlation, alert correlation. So all alerts that are generated or generating from different domains or different solutions with similar indicators of compromise, they actually get grouped together into a single incident. And that's why you're able to understand, the attack story. How is the attacker moving laterally within the network? And, the system is able to then better understand, yes, this is definitely, this is definitely a suspicious activity, and then take the necessary actions to block that attacker on their path. At a quick glance, you're also able to see, what are the assets that have been affected by this incident, right? So what are the assets, what's the associated IP addresses and all of that, right? You're able to carry out investigations a lot easier and faster. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, this is all powered by AI. So in this case, we have Security Copilot embedded in here, which just at a quick glance, you're getting that incident summary, right? You're getting insights into what exactly is going on, and then you're able to focus on what really matters to, respond to this attack. So this is a quick view of just the Unified SecOps portal, right? And just the value that it brings to organizations. And of course, the fact that it also helps you save time. I was at a SOC visit yesterday, and we're just discussing about the fact that previously in the past, for a lot of like the traditional way of securing the environment, a lot of times we would have to explore certain details, explore certain alerts, drill down into all of that to be able to identify exactly what's happening as part of an attack. But now with the integration of AI, with security teams now being better empowered with AI tools, right, and AI solutions within Defender, now you're able to instantly carry out all of those triage steps, right? You're able to even get recommendations on containment actions that can be taken. And of course, that then saves you time as a security specialist or analyst to then focus on what really matters, right, in securing your environment. So at this point, I'll hand back to Ivo just to show us, to walk us through how can CWSI help? How can CWSI help in better empowering your environment and better securing your environment with Defender XDR, with Microsoft Unified? Over to you, Ivo.
Thanks, Juan. That was really, really interesting. And nice to see also in your portal the automatic attack disruption that kicked in and prevented the attacks. That's always really interesting to see. Speed is key, right? Speed is key in these scenarios. So in terms of CWSI itself, how can we help? There's a couple of different things we do. I'll cover the first bit, and Robin's going to help me with the second bit because he's quite a lot better at this than I am. The very first thing we do, we look at your 365 security review. So we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at your environment as a whole, and where are the gaps in your security stack? And if we think about the Microsoft story here, depending on your licensing, where does your adoption is as well. So one of the key things we see with customers, be that E3, E5, or a mix of P2 add-ons, the biggest challenge is that they're not getting the value for the product they paid for. They're not using all of the tools and capabilities available to you. So that's what we do with this particular review. We look at discovery, we're looking at full environment review, but then we assess your policies and configurations, seeing how secure you are, where the gaps are. We benchmark it against Microsoft best practices and CSI and MITRE, and then we come out with recommendations and a priority roadmap for you how to remediate in your organization. So what does that really look like? I have a sample output here of one of the sessions that we do. So again, security is a journey. Okay, so we've been talking for the last 45 minutes or 15 minutes that identity is really important. And the reason it's important that it starts at the very start. Identity is the entry point to everything. And that's what we always say, security is a journey. So if you secure your identity, then we can start moving down the stack. What are you going to use with this identity? I'm going to access an endpoint, be that a POS system, an example, be that a back office computer. Next, we need to secure the endpoint itself. And we need to make sure that these two siloed solutions talk to each other. Once I have my identity, I have my endpoint, I've logged into something, and I want to do some productivity. that comes normally in two flavors. If you're back office, email is what you're going to do most of the time, and hence email protection is really important as well. And going back to the tie to the frontline piece is phishing can happen from a known account. For example, I have a frontline person, Juan, who's a great salesperson in my organization, and she only has access to Teams. And from my perspective, I'd say, well, Juan can't do any damage because all she has access to Teams. She has access to no company data, no servers, no SaaS solutions. But then me and Juan could be friends outside of work, right? And we trust each other. And Juan messaged me on Teams, say, hey, look at this cool thing I found. And next thing you know, I'm clicking a malicious link and I'm susceptible to those attacks. So it is important to understand that just because there's no access for the end user, it still can be malicious to your organization. Once we've covered identity, email, and endpoints, we're looking at additional productivity. So that could be your cloud apps. That could be your, I don't know, Google Cloud Storage, your Dropbox, your Salesforce, your Copilot, for example, or any other AI tool. That is your SaaS application. That is your productivity that you're going to utilize. Once we've protected these four pillars, we need something that's going to tie it together. Hence, we talk about XDR. And in Juan's example, we can see the automatic attack disruption use some of the MITRE techniques to identify the behavior of a business email compromise and was able to stop it dead in its tracks. But that's only because the underlying products that XDR is made up of were configured correctly. Hence, this part of the investigation is really, really important. If you bought the product, it's not enough. The product needs to be configured. It needs to be fed and watered. It's like any other solution. We can't just deploy and forget. Security adapts and changes all the time. Obviously, this is your entry point into security. Once you're at the XDR stage and all the boxes are green, great. Your secure as you can be from a proactive and preventative point of view. What happens to reactive? And so one of the SOC partners we worked with always says it's not a matter if you get breached, it's a matter of when you get breached. And you need to be ready for that scenario. Hence the enhancement with SIEM and SOAR. With SIEM and SOAR, we can do automations, we can do investigations, we can do Copilot for security. We can bring in workloads that are not part of the Microsoft suite. We can bring in workloads for on-prem, like switches, routers, etc. Anything you can think of that is related to your systems, SIEM and SOAR can correlate that and bring it in, scan it against the threat indicators offered by Microsoft, and give you a lot more insight. And more importantly, you can start automating things. There's automation playbooks you can use to do your manual responses that you do every day that you spend 80% time on, automate them so that you have more time to look at the more important stuff. What really should happen is you need to get to a point where the really important stuff is front and center. And for that to happen, we need to kill the noise. And lastly, I call it managed service, but it's not a managed service in the traditional point of view. This is irrelevant if the managed service is a third party or if it's an internal team, but organizations do need a dedicated security team. If you think about the job of security and IT are there to enable things, security is there to prevent things in broad strokes. Unfortunately, that's how it is. The same team cannot do both because it's a bit of a conflict of interest. So what we do is we investigate your environment, we come up with this roadmap, we talk to you as well what your priorities are, what you're using, what you'd like to be using, and then we kind of adapt the roadmap based on your licensing maturity. Robin, would you like to go over the other part?
Yeah, of course, that kind of leads quite nicely on. So as part of this kind of session, we're offering a complimentary risk to reward roadmap engagement where we'll effectively sit and work with you and your team to help understand what that current security posture looks like, what that risk tolerance looks like as a business. Every business is different in terms of how much they want to focus in this area, and help to provide you a clear understanding around what you could do with your current licensing, your current security tools, and how we can help that to improve that overall using those current kind of tool sets that you've got. So there's a QR code there if you'd like to scan that to request interest in doing this. We'll also put a link into the chat. You can click on there as well. And as I said, these typically take about an hour or so for us to run through this with you with one of the teams such as Evo, really helping to give you that real clear understanding around your current security tooling and how we can help to improve that for you. So that's everything that we had planned for today's session. Hopefully everyone's found that kind of useful and insightful. So thanks for the kind of speakers today. So Ivo, Gary, and Juan, really kind of useful from our side. We're probably running a little bit short on time in terms of kind of questions, but if anyone's got any questions, please put them into the chat. We will kind of follow up with any we don't get the chance to kind of run through today. But just again, thank you to the speakers and hope everyone found it useful.